Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's presentation and panel on how to make your release more sustainable. For those that don't know, I'm Karen Emanuel, the CEO and founder of Key Production, a creative agency that designs and manufactures physical products for the music industry, as well as other industries. Rather than me standing on stage and going through a presentation, which quite frankly terrifies me, I thought I'd invite a couple of colleagues to help me out. So if you could introduce yourselves. Jude, do you want to go first?
I'm Jude, membership manager from the Association of Independent Music, and we are the organisation representing self-releasing artists, labels, distributors, and we work with associated businesses like Key Production, and I'll talk to you about why I'm here in a bit.
And my name's Nigel. I co-run the labels Full Time Hobby and Hassle, and I'm also one of the co-founders of Music Declares Emergency and the AIM Climate Group.
Okay, so today I'm going to start with how vinyl's made, then look at some historical data, talk about how to make a release more sustainable, and indeed the changes that we can make as businesses, artists and individuals. And then we'll have a look at what the future might bring. So I thought we'd just quickly run you through the process of how vinyl is made through the medium of videos. It will give you an idea of the amount of processes and resources involved. We do actually run in-depth Production 101 workshops. So just scan the barcode at the end, come onto our website and or ask any member of staff, and we'll do that for you.
DMM stands for Direct Metal Mastering. Unlike conventional disc mastering, where the provided audio source is cut in studio onto a lacquer-coated aluminium disc, DMM is done by cutting straight into metal, utilising a high-frequency carrier system and specialised diamond stylus, vibrating at more than 40 kHz to facilitate the cutting. The DMM is then processed and test pressings are created. DMM processing can have less stages than lacquer processing. Some pressing plants only offer this option, and some will choose between lacquer and DMM depending on the music and what the engineer thinks will sound better. After cutting the audio grooves on the lacquer or DMM, it's necessary to send the lacquer for further processing. The lacquer is washed, sprayed with a solution of silver nitrate, and immersed in a chemically activated bath consisting of a solution of nickel salt and other ingredients. The nickel layer formed by the electric current running in the bath is then separated from the lacquer and is called a father. The same process with slightly amended settings is applied for the forming of the mother from the father and the stamper from the mother. The stamper is manually hand sanded to make the surface free of any imperfections, and the grooves are then viewed on a screen via a microscope. The stamper is placed in the centre of a rotating wheel device, clamped and screwed. Once in the correct position, the machine creates a central hole. The edges are then trimmed, and the stamper is firmly clamped to the stamping mould, ready to be used for vinyl production. The main principle of pressing records has remained unchanged for several decades, with some slight improvements in the technology over the years. A hydraulic press is fitted with 2 preheated moulds, and then fitted with stampers. The preheated vinyl matter is inserted into the machine, sandwiched between 2 completely dry labels. Once the pressing process is started, the labels and vinyl matter are pressed under a pressure of 100 or more tons at a temperature of 160 degrees Celsius, or 345 degrees Fahrenheit for our friends across the pond, for a precise amount of time. The surfaces of the groove stampers are copied exactly into the vinyl matter. After the pressing mould is sufficiently cooled, the press opens and the vinyl record is removed, trimmed to the required size, and visually inspected.
Hello. As you can see, it's quite a process, and you might have heard recently about nickel prices going up, or the availability of nickel not sort of being available, and loads and loads of supply chain problems. And you can see why this has been affecting pressing and why it's been taking a lot longer, not only just because of more demand than supply. Anyway, before we get on to some stats, Jude and Nigel, do you want to tell me about your involvement in sustainability in the industry and why you got involved?
Yeah, I can start. So I've always personally kind of had an interest in the environment and making things more sustainable, but it had been kind of separate from my working life. And I carried on and just thought that was fine. But then I went and did a course in climate science at the Royal Institute, and I was absolutely terrified what I found out. And I was thinking, if this is true, if you know what I'm learning here is true, why aren't people out in the streets absolutely screaming about this? Why aren't things happening? And then not long after that, the bridges were blocked by Extinction Rebellion. And I thought, right, this is happening. And their main thing was tell the truth. And so it really inspired me. So I got quite involved with Extinction Rebellion. And through that, I met quite a few other people who were also involved in the music industry. And we were like, well, this is fine to get on and do this personally, but why don't we actually get involved in our own industry and try and make change? So we started Music Declares Emergency from that point. And we thought, you know, think globally, act locally, and just try and get some change. So I started to turn to what I was doing in my own company and looked at every aspect that I could change. You know, I'd done it personally in terms of reducing the amount of flights, turning vegan, cycling, you know, every little bit that I could do. And then I went through every process I could do work-wise. And then through that, I got chatting with Jude and we set up the AIM Climate Group. So it's really been kind of a way of taking the knowledge and I would say the climate grief that I've had from realising how shit things really are and trying to actually do something about it, and how positive that's been for me anyway, to try and move forward.
And yeah, so for me, so what AIM does is supports businesses, independent businesses in saving money, making money, you know, growing their business, but also in growing their business, you know, incorporating the values that they have, whether it's diversity, the streaming debate, or climate. And so I watched Cowspiracy, immediately became a vegan, and it's and I did things quite extreme, and then my mum became a vegan, and then I got a Fairphone, and then I switched my banking to Triodos, and similarly I was like, right, I'm doing this, but what else can I do? And at the same time, Peter Quick at Ninja Tune, Emily Moxon at Brownswood, Nigel at Full Time Hobby, all board members of AIM, were having the same conversation. So I was thrilled to hear that they wanted to start a climate action group. So we got together. And so I think what I would say is that no one business can fix the climate crisis, no one person, no one business. And so I met someone from the UN and I said, what can we do in music? What can we do? The same with the gaming industry. And they said, we can't really do much just with the independent sector. We need more of the music industry. So it took about 3 years because there was a pandemic in between. But we've now got, if you go to musicclimatepact.com, we've got, really to build on the work that individual businesses have been doing for a long time, we've got the majors and the independent labels committing publicly with science-based targets with UN-backed frameworks to reduce their carbon footprint and to publicly report on progress. And that's just the beginning. That's not a solution. It's the beginning of looking at getting our house in order so that we can then, and as an industry, it was saying competition doesn't come into it when we're talking about the planet. And actually, we were using the competition of the majors, to work in our favour, because if you had 2 majors signed up to this pact, but not the third one, it was a lot of toing and froing. So, but we got them to publicly declare. So it's the beginning, and we're working with Nigel and the other AIM members and the majors to push in the direction of talking to DSPs, supporting artists and speaking out about climate, and measuring their carbon footprint. And Key have been absolutely instrumental in driving that as well.
Well, thank you.
That's why I'm here.
Thank you. And I guess my journey kind of started, when I was a teenager, and was looking at the world then. I was considered a little bit weird. at that point, sort of worrying about the type of power that we were using and looking at renewables. And I went veggie back then. Yeah, I eat, yes. I eat responsibly now, but was veggie for about 19 years. And that it was me sort of reading into things and looking at what we were doing to our climate back then that made me always sort of think about things a bit deeper. And I know it seems a bit kind of like weird that I run a business that we make physical product, mainly out of PVC. But, you know, without music, there is no life. And so we've got to still have music in our lives. But if we can be as responsible as possible about the way we manufacture it, the way we consume it, if you think about it, records, CDs, box sets, whatever physical product, it's not there to throw away. It's there for you to keep, for you to treasure, and for you to pass on. And we're going to look at some stats. Credit of Carl Devine. He wrote it's quite a dry book, but it's really sort of worth having a look at. The stats here only go up to 2016. So they're a little bit out of date because obviously, as we all know, sort of vinyl has really exploded over the last few years. I did drop him an email and ask him if he'd updated the figures, but sadly not. But what we can see is that the overall amount of kilograms of plastic across all the major formats, these are US figures, it's reduced dramatically since 2000. And just as I'm being stato, manufacturing a vinyl record uses twice the amount of plastic of a CD and has over 12 times the emissions footprint. Cassettes are kind of in the middle when it comes to plastic, but they actually have the highest grams per unit emissions. Now, I know something's being done about this because the place where we make our cassettes has also become aware, obviously, of the climate crisis, and they are looking at sort of doing more recycled products within their cassettes. But another really interesting statistic, and this is taken from an article from last year, apparently new vinyl records account for approximately less than 0.5% of the global production of PVC. And the next slide shows how greenhouse gas emissions started decreasing as less and less product was manufactured, and how it's changed according to the popularity of the format. By 2016, though, emissions have shot up to an all-time high. But this is due to downloading and streaming. So quite often, there's an assumption that digital music has no carbon footprint, but it does. Obviously, everything has to be hosted somewhere, and the servers have to be called. There's a huge IT footprint. I love these figures. So this was from Spotify streams of driver's license since Jan 2021, which, as you can see, has a bigger carbon footprint than a person flying from London to New York and back 4,000 times. This is from an article that was published in the New Statesman by Ellen Pearson-Hager and Catherine Swindells, and it's from last November, and it's called "How Environmentally Damaging is Music Streaming?" It's really worth a look at. And in the article, Dr. George from Keele University and her co-author Deirdre Mackay calculated that if you listen to an album more than 27 times, here's that stat, it makes better environmental sense to buy that album on CD rather than to stream it. Back in October, she actually had redone the figures and updated the numbers on the carbon reporting figures for plastic for a CD with its case and for media streaming. The conclusion there was listening to an album via a streaming platform for just 5 hours is equal in terms of carbon to the plastic of a physical CD. And for a vinyl record is 17 hours. So if you're going to listen to something once, stream it. But if you're going to play it time and time again, which most fans do, buy it.